So, as someone who uses Lightroom to edit my photos pretty much exclusively, I still get asked one question often enough. If I'm able to edit my photos in Lightroom, do I even need Photoshop? Well, of course, the answer is going to vary from person to person. But for me, I'm always going to have Photoshop installed on my computer because it lets me explore so many outside of the box creative edits thanks to its layered based workflow and super deep well of tools. And that's what this video is all about. Lately, I've been seeing a lot of photos shared with this particular technique, even though the technique is not necessarily new. So I decided to dig in to see how it works. The generally agreed upon name for this technique is called pixel stretching. And it's a ton of fun to experiment with because the opportunities are endless. Now, as with most Photoshop tutorials, there are 100 different ways to approach the technique. I'm thinking about the Orton effect here. And this is mine. So my advice is to learn it and then adapt it to suit your taste. After all, that's exactly what I did. All right, let's dive in. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and this is not a very complex tutorial. The ways you can make it creative can go kind of through the roof, but the actual kind of mechanics of this tutorial are pretty straightforward. First thing I like to do is just rename my layer. I do this with the masking panel in Lightroom all the time, and I also like to rename my layers in Photoshop as well, just because it'll help me identify what's what down the line. And so the basic premise, it's super simple is you will need to have a subject. That's the first and most important thing. You want to have a very clearly defined subject in the photo because that's what you're going to be stretching with respect to the rest of the photo. Another important thing that I found in my experiments is that it's best when the subject has some kind of bold or vibrant colors. That just makes it look a lot cooler, trust me. So, the first thing we'll do here is we're going to go up to select, and then we're going to select subject. And this is going to make a selection of the subject that Photoshop identifies. You can see this did a brilliant job here. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to create a new layer just with this subject. And the easiest way to do that is to use the keyboard shortcut on Mac, which is Command J, or on Windows, which would be Control J. And you could see now we have this layer over here, which is just the subject. Let's go ahead, rename this layer. We'll call this car. Okay, so now that we have our subject on its own layer, the next thing we need to do is make our selection. And so for the pixel stretching technique, you just need to make a 1 pixel wide selection. And so if you're wondering, well, how do I do that? Actually, if you go ahead and you click on the marquee selection tool right here, you click and hold it, you'll see a flyout menu. And there are two options here, which I admit I've never used in my entire life until I started researching this tool. Like I never used either of these. You've got a horizontal single row marquee tool, and you've got a vertical single column marquee tool. We're going to go with the single column. Now, when you click, you'll see that there is a single column here. And if you click and hold, you can actually move this around. Now, generally speaking, I like to kind of find an area where the selection, the single selection goes through the entirety of the subject. Remember, though, we've got the car layer selected. So even though this selection goes through the entire span of the photo, it's only going to work with this selection here. It's not going to bother with the background. Actually, let me go ahead and move this contextual floating menu over here. And so now that we have the selection made, just like before, when we made our subject selection, we're going to create a new layer just with this 1 pixel sliver. Again, Command or Control J, and then let's rename that layer. I'll call this pixel stretch front. It's not really even the front. It's kind of like the middle, but whatever. So with this pixel stretch front layer selected, the next thing that I like to do is take the subject and put it on top. I could have shown you, like, done the stretch without it, but just know that once you put that selection, that 1 pixel selection on its own layer, derived from the subject, put that subject layer on top. Now, this is very important. Click on that layer. You don't want to stretch the subject layer. You want to stretch this. So with that done, let's go ahead. We'll go to Edit. Then we're going to go to Transform, and we're going to select Distort. You'll now see we have this control here. And I'm going to put my cursor right here and then drag out. And you can see this really kind of cool effect. I'm actually going to adjust it so that it's kind of following the direction of the car. I could have gone straight, but that doesn't look as good. The car is kind of, I purposely gave this photo a bit of a Dutch tilt. And so I want this stretch to match that. And so you can see here that you've got this really cool stretch. I'm going to go ahead and click on done. And there's that kind of really cool effect. Like, even if we were just done with this, I think that's pretty cool. But we can have more fun. Like, this is just the most basic kind of implementation. You select your subject, you put the subject on this layer. You use that single row or single column selection tool. You make a selection off of that subject, and then you put that on its own layer. And then once that's done, you put that layer below the subject and you do a distort transform. And there you go. That is the technique. If we just stopped here, you'd have what you need to do pixel stretching. But like I said, there's a lot more fun that you could have, because not only do you have the ability to distort your transform, but you also have access to the full breadth of Photoshop's tools. So what does that mean? Well, I'm going to zoom out here a bit, and let's go ahead and go back to the subject layer here, the car. And just like before, I'm going to click and make a selection. And this time I'm going to put the selection somewhere over, maybe over here. Just like before, Command or Control J, that puts it on its own layer. Let's rename this. We'll call this Pixel Stretch Back. And again, put the subject on the top. Let's go ahead and let's select that back. And just like before, let's select Edit, Transform, Distort, and we're going to drag this out. And so nothing special right now, right? Like, you click done and we kind of, it's cool, you know. Uh, I do like the kind of difference in the different area, in the different stretches here, because it's stretching whatever the cross section is that we selected. And so because I put that second selection here with these two little kind of side fenders, you can see them over here. And also the rear window is stretched out. So I don't know, this is just a lot of fun, but we're not done. We can still have fun with this. We can actually make things even cooler. So what I'll do is I'm going to go back to edit, and I'm going to go to free transform here. And you can see we have the pixel stretch selection made. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on this icon here. This is the warp tool. For this, I think it helps to zoom out a bit more even. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bumper here and I'm going to drag it up. And you can see why I said it helps to zoom out, because it just makes it easier to see. And then I'm going to take the bottom left here, this corner, and I'm going to drag that out too. And so again, it's I don't know, it looks really fun. You can have all kinds of creative fun with this. Like, you could just click this and drag it around however you want. And so really the world's your oyster here. And so when you're done, just remember to click on the check mark here, and there you go. Like, if we just kind of, let's, toggle these, that was our original photo. And then, I think it's awesome to be able to do this. Like, it's just a ton of fun. It adds a different look to your photo. And especially because you can see the car kind of had some motion, it kind of accentuates all of that in a very kind of graphical way. All right, I've got another example here, and same principles, just a few different tools. We'll take it a bit further, so to speak. So you can see there's a little bee here. I promise you, I did not, like, time this or anything. In fact, I think I was just taking the photo of the lupins, and you know this little bee was over here. So with that, what I'm going to do is I want to make a selection of that bee. And so to do that, if I do select subject here, watch, if I go to, actually, first thing, let me go ahead and rename this. We'll call this background. All right. If I go to select and then select subject, Photoshop will identify, all of this area here as the subject, which I don't want. So I'm going to, deselect this right here. And I'm going to use this object selection tool, this icon right here. And if you don't see it, just click over here and make sure that you have object selection tool. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a little selection around the bee. And there you go. Now remember, that's the first thing we need to do, is make the selection of our subject. So now what we're going to do is press Command or Control J, which puts that subject on its own layer. Let's rename this. We're going to call this B. And just like before, let's take our single column selection tool. Let's click and put it over the B, like right around there. And just like before, Command or Control J to put that on its own layer. And we'll call this Pixel Stretch B. Then we'll put the subject, or in this case here, the B, that layer above the pixel stretch, and then make sure you select the pixel stretch. Let's go to Edit, Transform, Distort, and then we'll go ahead and we will click and let go here, and then click on Done. Now you might think like, okay, that's cool. That is kind of cool. But remember, we still have the warp capabilities. So we'll go right back. We could have done it as part of this, to be honest. So like if I was in Transform and Distort here, before I click the check mark, that warp icon is right here. You don't have to go back. I just did it in several steps so you can visualize. But now I can go ahead and click on the warp, and I can, again, stretch this out. Something like this. Maybe just go one direction and just have fun with it. Make it a little bit bigger, move it around. Again, it's totally up to you how you want to kind of have fun with this. So something like that looks good. So I'll click Done. And there's our warp. And again, it looks like a lot of fun, but we can still have more fun because again, we can make multiple stretches. In this case here, I stretched the bee. Let's go ahead and stretch this flower. So we'll go to our background layer just like before. I'm going to go to the object selection tool again, and I'm just going to draw a rough selection around this part of the flower. I want to make sure I don't get the bee. And there's our selection, nice and clean. Again, Command J. This case here, we can call this flower. And then again, let's go to our single column selection here. We'll put it somewhere right around there. Again, Command or Control J. And then this time we're going to call this pixel stretch flower. Let's make sure in this case that the flower is above that pixel stretch. And then select the layer. We'll go to Edit, Transform, Distort, and let's stretch it out. So something like that. And again, let's click on Warp while we're here. I'm going to zoom out a bit. And I'm going to bring this down and bring this down as well. Or maybe up a little bit. Something like that. I don't know. Again, it's totally up to you. You can have as much fun as you want. Now, we can call things done here. Like, I think this is pretty fun, right? But actually, there's a ton more that we can do. For example, with this selected, the pixel stretch flower layer, and the object selection tool still selected, let's go ahead and select background. And I'm just going to click over here. And you can see that Photoshop does a really good job of selecting all this stuff. Now, here's the key. Let's go ahead and let's select that pixel stretch layer again. And this time I'm going to create a new mask by clicking on the mask icon here. And then I'm going to, with the mask selected, you can see here, I want to invert it. So I'm going to press Command I or Control I. And now you've got the kind of that blur kind of going through the flowers, which I think is pretty cool. It gives you this kind of 3D look. You can refine this even further. With the mask selected, just go to the brush icon, press B, make sure that black is your foreground color here. And, you can go ahead and restore some of this area here to give it more of a 3D look. So like, something right around here looks good. You can go crazy, like painting. I just wanted to kind of show you these things that you can do. Like, let me get rid of some more of that. Yeah. Okay, cool. This is the more I do it, the more I have fun with it. Other things you can do is you can duplicate the layer. So I'm just going to select it and press Command J. You could see how it kind of gives it even more of an accentuated look, bolder colors. Same thing here. You can duplicate that layer and it kind of makes it bolder. The other thing you can do is I can take both of these layers here, select them, and put them into a group by pressing Command G or Control G. And that we can call this pixel stretch flower. So it's both of those layers in one group here. And then I can change the blending mode. So I can go to like soft light here. I can experiment. Like actually hard light looks really cool. Same thing here. I can put both of these into their own group. We'll call this pixel stretch B. And then we can change this to hard light as well. Nah, that's not as good. I'm gonna undo that. I like the regular blending mode better. But the point is, I just kind of wanted to show you all the different ways that you can uh, have fun with pixel stretch. Not just apply pixel stretch, which you could do. You could just have those straight lines, no problem. But with the combination of the warp tool, with the combination of masks and the powerful object selection tool and blending modes, I mean, you can take this to all kinds of directions. And to be honest, that's the whole point of these videos. I know that some people will probably look at this and get turned off, like, "Oh, I don't do any of that stuff to my photos. That's not, photography anymore." And we can agree to disagree. I take photos and I edit photos because I enjoy it, and I love Lightroom. I love Camera Raw. I will edit my photos all day long there. But sometimes, I don't know, I just want to take things a step further and just have some fun. And I think that's what this is all about. So, with that, if you want another technique in Photoshop that is also awesome that I shared a while ago using the path blur tool, I've got this video here, or you can see what YouTube thinks you might like. As always, a thumbs up is greatly appreciated, as is clicking on the subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified of all future videos. Thanks a lot, everyone.